Bill. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this second public session of 2025 to order.
Your Worship, all public meetings of Moncton City Council are simultaneously translated. Hearing devices are available. You have the right to address City Council in the official language of your choice. Meetings are also simulcast in both languages on City of Moncton's YouTube channel and can be found on our website at moncton.ca. If you have registered with the City Clerk's office prior to the agenda deadline, 7 days before the meeting, you will be given 5 minutes for your presentation. Other public presentations will be given 2 minutes. You will receive a reminder when 1 minute is remaining. No presenter shall speak disrespectful of council, staff, or a member of the general public. The use of offensive or profane language will not be tolerated. Any breach of this guideline may result in the presenter being asked to leave the council chambers at the discretion of the chair. Un service d'interprétation simultanée est offert durant nos réunions. Vous avez le droit de parler dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Les casques d'écoute servent à la traduction sont disponibles. Ces réunions sont diffusées en français et en anglais sur la plateforme YouTube. Les réunions sont également diffusées sur l'Internet à moncton.ca. Si vous vous êtes inscrit auprès du bureau de la greffière avant la date limite, c'est-à-dire 16 jours avant la séance, vous aurez 5 minutes pour effectuer votre présentation. Toute présentation du public aura droit à 2 minutes. Une cloche sonnera pour vous indiquer qu'il ne vous reste qu'1 minute. S'il vous plaît de noter, aucun présentateur ne devra manquer de respect lorsqu'il parlera du Grand Conseil, d'un membre du personnel ou du grand public. Le langage diffamatoire et les propos offensants ne seront pas tolérés. Le président ou la présidente pourra demander à tout présentateur qui enfreint cette directive de quitter la salle du Conseil.
Merci, Madame la Greffière. Are there any changes to today's agenda?
None.
I would take a motion on the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Legier, seconded by Councillor Steeves. On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
The next item would be declarations of conflict of interest et déclaration des conflits d'intérêts.
I do not see any.
Okay. There are no minutes and no consent agendas this evening, so the first up is public and administration presentations, and we have one public presentation, presentation for New Year's Eve Family Fun Fest recap. Bill Whalen, co-chair of Events Moncton, is here to do the presentation.
Welcome, Bill and team. Do you want to just touch the button on your microphone there? There we go. You're on.
Okay, Your Worship and members of council, one of the many legacies of the World Junior Hockey Championship has been the New Year's Eve Family Fun Fest. Events Moncton determined after the World Juniors that it was an appropriate and welcomed endeavor to continue for our community. So Larry and I approached Claire and Shane Essen to co-chair the event, and the rest, as they say, is history. Tonight I am pleased to invite Claire and Shane to introduce their committee so you can see the people behind the hard work and get the well-deserved recognition that they deserve. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hey, welcome. Thank you very much, Mayor Arnold. Thank you, Bill. Mayor Arnold, council members, city staff, guests, and members of the public. Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting us to speak to you today about the City of Moncton's third annual New Year's Eve Family Fun Fest. As Bill mentioned, we're joined this afternoon by 11 of our dedicated committee members. My wife Claire is going to introduce their names and ask them to please stand.
So joining Shane and I today is Debbie McGinnis from the United Way, Brenda Teed, Natasha Ostaff with the Wildcats, Connor Woods with J.D. Irving, Charlie Taylor, Mike Belong, Gilles Lavoie, Bill Whalen, Larry Nelson from Events Moncton, Vanessa Cormier, Chad Gautreau from City of Moncton, and Councillor Marty Kingston.
So thank you for that round of applause. In addition to our committee members, we also had 40 volunteers help us with a total of 60 people who helped organize and help host a very successful family event on New Year's Eve. The event started at 2 p.m. with children's entertainment and finished just past midnight with the second fireworks of the evening. We also had fireworks for younger families at 7:15 p.m. This year, we were very fortunate to have some excellent entertainment. We had face painters, we had a photo booth, children's choir, local bands on the Ian Fowler Oval, and our musical headliners this year were the Big Bad Party Band, Lay Hey Babies, and of course, everybody's favorite, Signal Hill. We estimate this year that we doubled the crowd that we had from a year ago. We estimate there's approximately 20,000 people in attendance, and some of the slides that you'll see towards the very end, you'll see the people there for sure. The Moncton Wildcats were again our presenting sponsor, and their game was a sellout with 8,600 fans. The 3 local hotels close to the Avenir Center were sold out. That's the Hyatt, the Crowne Plaza, and the Hilton, and the downtown restaurants and bars were packed. The event was no cost to attend, which is very special, and food was donated by different organizations and served by the United Way staff and volunteers on a donation basis. And we're pleased to say that just under $7,000 was raised for the United Way. The cost to host the event was approximately $200,000. And this was made possible because of generous corporate sponsors. We had 50 companies in the Greater Moncton area who sponsored the event, along with funds provided by Events Moncton and the province of New Brunswick. It was a challenge, but we were able to rise to the occasion and raise that amount of funds. Our goal for the event was to break even, and we're pleased to say we did so, as we did last year. 2,500 tickets to the Wildcats game were donated by the local business community to organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, METS, Krista Richard's after-school program, and many of the less fortunate here in the community, including many new Canadians. For many of these people, it was their first hockey game. In closing, we would like to acknowledge the great support provided by city staff members Vanessa Cormier, Chad Gautreau, and Councillor Kingston. We look forward to organizing and hosting the City of Moncton's 4th annual New Year's Eve event, Family Fun Fest event, and we thank you for having us. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much for that. Questions? Councillor LeBlanc.
Are you going to come back next year?
We are going to come back next year, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any questions. On behalf of all of the citizens, thank you for the amazing effort that you put into this. And I heard nothing but rave reviews, and that never happens. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It was really a great night.
Thank you.
Your Worship, there are no administration presentations exposés de l'administration. Il n'y en a pas ce soir. Next would be planning matters, les questions d'urbanisme. And the first up is introduction new rezoning application for 358 Ryan Street. And I believe that Dylan Geldart is going to be taking the lead on this.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Or
Welcome.
Good evening. Yeah, thanks. So Bill unfortunately can't be here today due to delays in his flight, so I'll be presenting the next 2 planning items. All right. So the first one is going to be for an introduction for a new rezoning application at 358 Ryan Street. The property is currently zoned residential mix, and the owners, Diallo Development Inc., are proposing to rezone the property to R3, multiple unit dwelling, to permit a 3-story, 47-unit apartment building. So the property is located in the city's north end in Ward 3, generally located between the Horseman Road roundabout and Hildegard Drive. As some of you will remember, this property actually went through the rezoning process in 2024 when it was rezoned to residential mix to allow for a 24-unit townhouse node. Since receiving their approvals, the developer has cited unforeseen economic challenges associated with higher interest rates and the cost of material and labors that has rendered this project unfeasible. Due to the cost it was going to be to create each individual unit, and that being reflected in the rent. So instead, the applicants are requesting, again, to rezone the property from RM, residential mix, to R3 to permit for the apartment building. So the apartment is all going to be located within one building with a reduced footprint for each unit. So it should be relatively cheaper on per unit cost, which will then help meet their affordability goals. So here we have the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The development proposal includes 47 residential units, which will consist of studio apartments, one-bedroom units, as well as two-bedroom units. The development will provide more density on site, so we're looking at an additional 23 residential units on the property compared to the previous plans. But at the same time, the building's footprint is going to be reduced to 23%, so a decrease of almost 10% of the building's footprint. The parking plan includes 175 parking spaces, representing a parking ratio of 1.6 spaces per unit. And the parking plan is also accounted for 16 long-term bike lockers that will be offered to tenants, as well as bike racks installed near the main entrance for visitors arriving by bike. So a key consideration in the review process was to help create an appropriate and attractive face of the building towards the street. And this can be particularly challenging when we have these narrow lots that are quite deep and the buildings are perpendicular to the road rather than being parallel with. Overall, we feel that the design here for the apartment building is appropriate. So yes, they provide a main entrance and everything fronting the street, but they've done a really good job of accenting that public entrance through articulation in the building's design and high quality building materials such as the cladding. They've also located the balconies on the corner of the building, which is a design element that we see in some of our higher quality buildings in the city of Moncton. So the next question you have to ask is, does an apartment building belong in this area, in this location? And from a planning perspective, the North End is generally characterized as a low-density suburb that features single and two-unit dwellings. And while that housing type meets the needs of many people in Moncton, there is a growing need to introduce apartment buildings in these type of neighborhoods. And this is particularly important for two reasons. It's important for people who are looking for a housing option in these neighborhoods, but it's also important for those who are downsizing from their current residence who may choose to or wish to continue to live within their community. To evaluate the merits of apartment buildings in rezoning applications, the municipal plan stresses that apartment buildings should be located on our major streets where there's a high level of public transit. Ryan Street is a prime example of this. So Ryan Street was upgraded from a rural road to a collector street, which now is the main east-west collector in the North End, but also has a high frequency of public transit with buses. Route 50 would stop near this, just outside this site, approximately every 25 minutes. And then there are also painted bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of Ryan Street. Today, administration are recommending that Moncton City Council proceed with the zoning bylaw amendment by giving first reading of the bylaw, referring the bylaw to the Planning Advisory Committee for its written views, and setting a public hearing for March 17th at 4 p.m. in Council Chamber City Hall. If the rezoning is approved, it would be subject to 7 or 8 conditions that are outlined here, and we're also part of your guys' part of council's package. If this application proceeds, it would go to the Planning Advisory Committee on February 26th, and we would host the public hearing on March 17th. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. So as I think we got an email that we won't be officially voting for in favor, or no, we will still be voting, but we won't be noting the mover and seconder. Is there somebody who wishes to move this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Butler. Is there a seconder for it? Councillor Steeves. Terrific. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Est-ce que je peux poser en français?
Oui.
Oui, j'ai pas de problème avec le processus, puis on entendra ce que les gens disent, mais je suis juste curieux. Il y a 2 raisons principales pour lesquelles, dans 1 an, on a approuvé en février 2024, Puis là, en février 2025, on change ce qu'on a approuvé. Il y a deux raisons. Un, je comprends, les coûts de construction ont augmenté. Mais le deuxième, les intérêts ont augmenté. Pourtant, depuis un an, les intérêts ne cessent de baisser. Alors, qu'est-ce que je comprends pas, là?
C'est d'accord si j'ai répondu en anglais?
Oui.
Yeah. Alors, those were the 2 points that were raised by the developer themselves. As the planner, I'm not so much concerned with the reasons why. It's the questions I had asked myself, is an apartment building like this appropriate for this location? So that's this perspective that I was coming from. If you have specific questions related to, I guess, the reason why the developer is going through this process again, I would direct that question to them, perhaps during the public hearing would be best.
It's secondary to what we're studying here, but what I'm afraid of, red flags come up. We are asked as a council to modify it a year ago.
Yeah.
There were arguments why we modified the zoning a year ago. We did it. A year later, on two grounds, one of them is not really credible, the other one is, so that's fine. But what happens if some other problems occur, and 6 months from now, we are asked a third time to modify? What protection do the citizens have that, last year was tweaked a little bit, and now we're tweaking it, that it wasn't, I don't want to make it an accusation, but that we have not been, induced into moving something halfway and then further, and then we could be facing the same dilemma in 6 months or another year.
And I would say that there's always a risk that the plans can change. In this case, the plans were changed substantially from the townhouse, project. So we felt that it was only fair to council and to the public that we brought it back to this venue to go through the public hearing process again. But there's always a risk that this land, it's not developed by developer A, it's sold to developer B, and the developer B has different plans for this project. When we write the conditions, you'll notice the eighth condition is a general conformance clause. So it's expected that no matter who is buying this land subsequently would develop the lot in accordance with the plans that are submitted here.
Okay, we'll see. Merci. Merci, Madame le Maire.
Thank you. Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Arnold. Thank you, Dylan, for the presentation, stepping in, pinch hitter. And I'm glad Renee's here as well. I just want to bring council back to the conversation we had about traffic calming last week. And you may remember I brought up this particular road of Ryan. And if you can just picture it with me, when you come down Hildegard and go around that S turn, as soon as you start down Ryan, it's a straight shot to that traffic circle. And Councillor Butler and I do get complaints there. It's not to say that Rennick is not needed, and we don't oppose that. I think what I want to just bring up is, in addition to the traffic calming plan that we approved, this is new information. And when you presented, I heard things like high traffic, main collector road, all the very things that I tried to state last week. And so I just wonder if there's an opportunity for you guys to work with an additional condition, perhaps, on a traffic calming measure. I don't really care where or what. That's a separate conversation to not hold up this particular piece of it. But I know the numbers. I read up 14, 18, all that sort of thing. But it's the speed. It's the speed, and it's more stopping. There's more Amazon packages. There's more taxi cabs coming in to pick up people that don't have vehicles there. And so if that was added, I would be more enthusiastic to support that in the time that comes here for the additional ones. So that's what I want. Anybody want to, yeah, Renee, I guess it's a question or a statement to you.
Thank you for the concern, Councillor Steves. Yeah, so when we look at the trip generation from this particular development, it's quite low compared to the rest of the traffic we're seeing on Ryan. Not that to say there's no traffic calming concern, but what I'm trying to say here is that Ryan is on our list for evaluation for, for traffic calming, and this is going to be done despite this development. So we wouldn't impose necessarily a condition on this development. It would be my recommendation, but just to consider the traffic calming on Ryan through our normal program, because this additional amount of traffic would not really change what the decision is on Ryan Street when we're looking at the greater picture. We're fairly confident that once we start digging those numbers into Ryan, we'll probably end up with some traffic calming measures. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Dylan, for the presentation. I guess, in the north end, what we see a lot of, and, I look down further down Ryan, close to north of Fry School. We had a mixed residential, and then we wanted to change it to multi-unit dwelling, and that was, I think, 2 years ago. And my worry about us changing, especially right on the tail of what Councillor Bourgeois was saying. Last year, we changed it to residential mix, and now this year we're going to the multi-unit dwelling. And I wonder sometimes if the cost of land is changing because of our zoning. So in other words, if you got a piece of property and you can't afford to build single dwellings on it, so you come to council and you get the zoning redone, and then you put it on the market, and it's worth more money. So are we just helping the developer to get rid of this? Because what I'm saying is nothing ever happened further up Ryan when we did this. So to me, I have a hard time within a year. Nothing has been done. They come back, they want to put it back. They're saying they're going to build, but listen, I've seen lots of plans come across this desk here, even on a napkin. So, it's we have to make sure that something is going to be built here, because, I really, I'm really kind of getting a little tired of these people coming and wanting things changed like this within a year. Things haven't changed that much since 2024, but the cost of this land will go up. The other one would be, if it does come forward, I would hope that there's some affordable housing in here. So anyway, I'll leave it with that. Again, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to be leaning on this one because of the amount of time. Like Councillor Bourgeois said, 1 year we're doing it, next year we're not. So anyway, I'll leave that with you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Legier.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of concerns. I guess the first one is we're hearing more and more about the fact that, we've certainly been successful in building apartments, but we're not very successful in townhouses and single-family dwellings and even apartments with 3 and 4 bedroom units. So all of a sudden we had, a townhouse development, it's less pressure, and then all of a sudden we have this whole discussion in and around now it needs to be an apartment. So I have that concern, and I just wonder where urban planning sits on this. I mean, the numbers are clear. We have overcapacity. We've generated tons and tons of apartments and plans. So why would we be in a situation of recommending something that we currently need, which is townhouses?
Right. No, I can understand that. I guess I don't necessarily have the answer for you, but what I've seen in my time with the city is that townhouses had their time and place in the market where the cost of labor and materials was cheap enough where you could make it work. You could build a townhouse and rent it at $2,000 a month. In the last year or two, that's just no longer the case. People aren't coming forward with as much townhouses proposals just because of what it's going to cost for them. Once they bring that to market, the rent is going to be $3,000, which isn't going to be rentable to a large percentage of the population. So it's those apartment units that are really filling in that housing gap that we need at this time. It is the missing middle.
But shouldn't we be having a discussion to try to figure out then what it is that we need to do and to stimulate that type of construction and not just simply flip it and just say, well, it's just going to be an apartment?
Absolutely.
So I think we have to have that conversation. I think what I'm also concerned about is, and Councillor Butler had some good points where, you know, we rezoned it. We no longer put anything in that indicates a time frame at all. You know, why isn't it that this was why we rezoned it for this plan? This is what is allowed. This is a time frame. Perhaps if the time frame doesn't fit, there can be a apply to extend the time. But if you don't fulfill the reason the land was rezoned in the first place, do we have the ability to say, then it's off the table? Like you have to come back, like, because otherwise what happens is if the land all of a sudden is, for whatever reason you wish, has more value, you're going to flip it. You're going to do those things. And I think, we have to have those conversations now. And so that's where I feel that, we are missing the mark and we need to rethink this.
Yeah. Can I add just to that? I think the other point, so when you are rezoning lands, whether it be at Augusta Terrace, I believe it was, yes, it has an R3 zone, which the R3 zone is going to allow for more unit counts than maybe a neighboring RM zone, but it's conditioned, right? It's conditioned on the plans that what came to council and that were submitted and approved. So it doesn't provide them the complete development rights that are afforded by the R3 zone. So that's how you're guaranteeing, yes, perhaps it didn't get built in the last 2 years, but that's not to say that it won't get built in the next 5 according to those plans. And I think the real questions that we need to be asking ourselves is not getting involved in the more economic aspects at this stage, but is asking the question, does this type of housing choice belong here and will it benefit the community long term?
But I think it is really important though, because we know what we're missing. And just by simply saying, well, the economics don't work, and so therefore we're going to shelve that, and we're going to build more and more apartments. I don't think that certainly isn't what I feel is necessary in the city, and it's certainly not what I'm hearing from predictions moving forward on the type of housing we need. So that's why it's not to give you a hard time and say that it doesn't fit. I mean, this apartment complex could fit nicely there, but is it what we need? And so then that is the question. And then we're being asked to rezone something again on a project that we had determined that we rezoned in the first place for a project that we really quite liked. And again, interest rates have fallen. I don't know where the costs are, but I think those are all questions that I think a number of us may ask and continue to ask, and there's no, I think at the end of it, that's at least in my view, my personal disappointment in this, and I think we need to figure out ways, and that was somewhat of the federal government thrust of trying to, allow initiatives, for building and so on. And keep in mind the provincial government's looking at initiatives for construction and so on. So are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater before we know all those details? So in any event, I'll leave it at that. It'll go to the, however decision, if it goes to the Planning Advisory Committee, fine, and they can ask similar questions. So, merci.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions at this time. We can go to the vote.
Oh, we do vote. Oh, okay, like
Terrific. Thank you, Dylan. And the motion passes unanimously.
The next item is a public presentation for the Urban Boundary Amendment, 70 Queensway Drive, and Dylan is here once again.
Perfect. Perfect. So this is going to be the second of 3 meetings that this will be brought to council, so it's a public presentation. Fens Market Inc. is proposing to develop a new commercial lot at 70 Queensway Drive. The commercial development will feature 3 commercial tenants. You'll have a gas station and convenience store, a Denny's restaurant, as well as a Starbucks. The property is currently zoned and designated highway commercial in the zoning bylaw and the municipal plan. However, the property falls outside of the boundaries of the limits of the urban serviceable boundary, meaning that the property does not have the development rights to connect to the city's water and sewer systems. As a result, the applicants are requesting an amendment to Schedule 2 of the municipal plan that would include the project area within the urban serviceable boundary. The property is generally located at the corner of Mapleton Road and Queensway Drive in Ward 4. As a bit of a background, these 2 properties were held under the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure ownership for any future upgrades to their highway systems. However, in 2023, they determined that they no longer had a use for this specific lot and initiated a land disposition process where it was then acquired by Fens Market Inc. with the idea of developing the land according to the zoning for commercial use. So once the 2 properties are combined, it will have a total area of 3.5 acres and 275 meters of frontage on Queensway Drive. As I mentioned, the properties are already appropriately zoned to accommodate the commercial businesses, and no changes are required to the zoning itself. Instead, council is being asked to explore the merits of including these lands within the urban serviceable boundary so they can be serviced by municipal water and sanitary. It's also important to note that if for some reason the urban boundary amendment is denied, the applicants can still proceed with the commercial development, except they would have to use an on-site septic and well system. So here we have the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. The commercial building will have approximately 920 square meters of commercial space that's divided between those 3 tenants. They're proposing 2 driveway entrances on Queensway Drive that will grant access to the lots. The development will also feature an 8-pump gas station and 10 electrical vehicle charging stations. The Denny's restaurant will be more of a sit-down establishment. Meanwhile, the Starbucks will have that sit-down component, but will also have a drive-through component located on the south of the main building and parking area. So the applicant has submitted 3D renderings in order to provide a more detailed illustration of the lot layout. And as is required with all urban boundary applications, we ask them to submit 3 studies. So the first one is a cost-benefit analysis. And overall, the analysis determined that development will generate approximately $45,000 in tax revenue per year, and that there are no real additional significant costs that are going to be imposed on the city if this development moved forward. And what the study would have looked at is it determined that you have Queensway Drive that is fully built out to municipal spec. You have sewer and water currently running underneath of Queensway Drive, so there's no additional expansions to the infrastructure necessary there. Fire and police services are already served the area, so there's no additional cost to continue those services. And then the other thing that we looked at would have been waste collection. So in this case, waste collection is going to be the responsibility of the property owners and not the city. The second study was a servicing study. So overall, it was determined that there is sufficient capacity to support the development's water, sanitary, and stormwater management needs. So excess stormwater will be captured through a series of catch basins in the parking lot, but they're also planning to have a retention pond that will be located on the southeast corner of the lot near the Trans-Canada Highway. Finally, the third study was a traffic impact study, which was the purpose of it was determine the traffic volumes that will be generated from this development and what impact, if any, it's going to have on the surrounding street network. Understandably, it was confirmed that this development will increase traffic in the study area, particularly on the westbound entrance ramp that experiences issues today. But most of these trips will be what are called pass-by trips, so they're not going to be new trips that are being added to the system, but rather by people who are passing by this area on a regular basis. So people will essentially, exit the Trans-Canada Highway via the eastbound or westbound ramps. They'll stop at the development site and then they'll continue on to their original destination. The study also identified operational issues at both the westbound and eastbound exit ramps, and these are a result of existing conditions and not a result of this development, obviously, considering that they're existing today. Through our conversations with DTI, they have been planning for 2 infrastructure improvements in the area, including a roundabout at Mapleton, where it meets with the westbound entrance ramp, as well as an additional turning lane at the eastbound exit ramp, which would, through our conversations, these are planned for 2025, which would coincide with this development and would improve the performance of traffic operations in the study area in both the AM and PM peak periods. If the application is successful, here are the changes that are being proposed to Schedule 2 of the municipal plan. And so today, administration are recommending that Moncton City Council proceed with the municipal plan amendment and confirm the public hearing for March 17th, 2025. And if the municipal plan amendment is approved, should be subject to a resolution with the following 7 conditions. These conditions are also posted on the city's website for any members of the public who are observing today. As a next step, the application will be presented to the Planning Advisory Committee on February 26 for their written views, and then come back to Council for the public hearing on March 17th. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Dylan. Is there somebody who wishes to move this recommendation? Councillor Edgett, do you wish to move this recommendation? Yes. Is there a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Kingston. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci, Dylan. 2 questions. Pourquoi 25 années? C'était juste un chiffre qu'on a choisi au hasard ou est-ce que c'est best practice? Ou...
Ça, c'est un numéro qui sont dans le plan municipal. So it's when they develop their cost-benefit analysis, we asked them to look at the 25 years. I wasn't part of that when that was created, so I don't have an answer for you today, but I can look into it more.
Okay. All right, just curious. The second one is, if you could bring up the map again with all the little zebra passages, and from a policy perspective,
Yeah.
it makes no sense. The one with the stripes.
Yes.
That has the urban boundary or serviceable boundary. Oh,
This map here?
no, there's another one with,
It'd be the bylaw map itself.
maybe, you had it on the screen. Right there,
Yes.
perfect. It makes no sense for a normal person, so maybe, well, I shouldn't call myself a normal person, but there's like overlapping. Wouldn't it just make sense that we have just a line? That's the boundary, boom, 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 wherever it is. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4 lines around it, and then you have those 3 lines inside of it. What is the serviceable boundary? It's the one on the outside, wouldn't it?
Correct, it's the one on the outside, and
So why do we have the same lines on inside of the serviceable boundary? Is
So-
there a different serviceable boundary?
no, there's only the one in this case that we're dealing with. And I think the best part, I think it was map 3 in the slideshow, shows exactly where that is. But what will happen, what that map is saying is that it will be included in. So it's not this slide, but this one here. So if you look at the map on the left-hand side, that's showing where that yellow bold line is the urban boundary today. What that other map is showing is that the portion that's highlighted in red will essentially be included within the urban boundary. So there'll be a new, that yellow line will essentially move south closer to the Trans-Canada Highway, is what it's trying to articulate.
Sure, but it begs the question as to why we did the Donald Trump Sharpie thing and we sort of resculpted it. Why didn't we include this triangle from the beginning? If the pipes were already there, and I mean, it wasn't our land, it was provincial land, I can get that, but even if it was provincial land and it was serviced, why wouldn't we draw the line initially the right way, which is what we are asked to do this time?
Right. That's a really important question of this. So when it was created in 1997, those yellow bold lines that you're seeing there. And for the most part, the urban serviceable boundary follows our municipal infrastructure. So if you look down Elmwood, for example, on either side of Elmwood, you'll have like 200 to 300 meters will be captured within the urban boundary of land. This is a particular case. I wasn't here when it was created in 1997, but someone made the decision to intentionally exclude it from the urban boundary, thinking that land would never be developed for commercial purposes, but it would maintain under the ownership of DTI, because they probably had a history of not selling land for this type of development. But we're here today. It's been acquired by a private owner, and they're just being asked to be included within that boundary, because our service is already in place.
I get it.
Yeah.
I suspect that there are other areas of the city where the lines were drawn and are not the smartest lines. I suspect that we will have sooner or later other cases where we will be asked to modify the lines and they should have been drawn correctly in the first place. I wasn't here either. Not too many people were here 25 years ago who could explain why these anomalies appear. Can I make a request that we sort of, I don't know if that's the legal way to proceed. We have to wait for somebody to point out that, okay, we need to, or can we as a council say, you know what, this doesn't make any sense, let's draw it this way, the pipes go there anyways, so it's not as if we were damaging the city finances by redrawing a line as a la Donald Trump did with Alabama.
So, yeah, time is on our side on this one, because we're going through the municipal plan review, and that schedule belongs in the
But
municipal
that's
plan.
3 years away before
Right, so
we
that-
get it to approve. So is
that
there
will-
something that we need to do within the next 3 years that would avoid this kind of dilemma, the case-by-case modifications, tweaks, and everything else?
No, it's a really important exercise if you're going to be looking at modifying the urban boundary at a citywide scale. It needs to be looked at by a team such as the Municipal Plan Review Board, and not something, I would recommend it be part of the municipal plan, because that will ultimately shape what our land analysis looks like,
Okay.
where we
but
want to grow.
I'm willing to bet that we'll have other tweaks to do before we get to the municipal plan in 3 years, but we'll see. Merci beaucoup. Appreciate it. Merci, Madame le Maire.
Sorry, just a point of order, the municipal plan review is due in 16 months, so that's the plan. Councillor Richard.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Thanks, Dylan, for stepping in. So since the sign has gone up on the 22nd, I had a few conversations. So I have a few questions. I just want to confirm the PAC committee meeting on the 26th, that's open to the public?
That's open to the public for observation, but public participation will be limited to the public hearing scheduled on March 17th.
That's good, I just wanted to clarify. Had that question asked. I see Renee there, so I don't know if we have any plans to look at sidewalks going up Queensway. With this development, we are going to have more traffic, and I'll question that one later. For people, make it safe for people to walk.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Conseiller Richard. Actually, part of the DTI project that was shown on one of the maps, which included the roundabout, we are partnering with DTI to have sidewalk on Queensway for that first leg, if you wish, up to the development. And there's also some bike lanes being built under the TCH overpass. So to provide some connection there, because as you know, TCH is quite a barrier to active transportation. So we're working with DTI. Some of those components will be, city costs, while most of the project that you see on your map is DTI costs.
Okay, so suggestion would be to maybe go past the development and go pick up the residents that are past that. You also have a campground out there. There's going to be added traffic from the campground going to that store if this is built. Correct? So-
This is definitely a consideration. The challenge here is we have ditches. It's a rural roadway, so it's going to cost a lot more money to put the sidewalk. It's got to, as you know, fill the ditches, put a storm sewer system. So it's not your typical sidewalk extension, but it's something that we could probably put in our future capital plans to kind of look at where that sidewalk could lead in the future for phase 2, if you wish. For now, the budget was put in place for, again, that first part to make sure there's a connection to this development and also the hotel on the north side.
If we can keep that in the plans for the safety of the residents and the public.
For sure, we'll do.
Okay, Dylan, still around? All right, we're talking about the emergency services. We're talking about fire and police services, not anticipating significant impact and cost to deliver those services. How about getting to, let's say, up Queensway or past Mapleton? How about the with all the traffic that already is there, and we're going to add some, no doubt. Have we looked at that side? For fire and police, ambulance, being able to get up to those residents?
It's more of a transportation question. Yeah. Congestion.
Yes,
It all falls on the traffic, and that roundabout.
yes.
We have no dates.
For the actual construction?
Yes.
Yeah, so it is planned for summer of 2025.
That's actual?
Yes, well, I mean, I can't speak for NBDTI more than the information that I have, but we have recurring meetings with them. This is actually a project that was designed and tendered actually about 5-6 years ago and was pulled away at the last minute. And the change of government, I guess now it's back on the table. That's all I can say, I guess, at this point. But we're meeting with the consultant and DTI on a monthly basis. We have an upcoming meeting, and everything's pointing for a 2025 construction. So, I mean, all I can do is share what they're sharing with me at this point, and it is scheduled for being tendered for this summer, yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to go to the traffic study where we're talking about expected to be pass-by trips. Vehicles that are already traveling near or by the site. This is going to be a gas station, coffee, whatever else, just on the side of the highway. You're going towards Fredericton. All of a sudden, hey, it's right there. Why not go? You're going to pull right in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're creating traffic. It's not just the passing by. But I don't know how the traffic study is capturing that.
Yes, and really, when I spoke with the staff, regarding this, for me, it was, I didn't really care about the bypass versus the additional. I was like, what I think the people are concerned is what's the amount of traffic this will generate on Queensway, particularly, I think, for the residents. So total traffic, we're looking at about in the AM peak hours, so they're in the rush hour of the morning, with about 400 additional vehicles, and in the PM about 270, and that's based on the traffic impact study that was done by the consultant. So again, about 400 in the morning and then 270 in the afternoon. And now, mind you, that will be just on that short leg of Queensway. People are not going to go past that area because this is for the trip generation from that particular site.
So looking at Queensway itself and not really the intersection.
It's basically what this development will generate as as traffic, and as we know, that will be the shortest route will be from the highway to the site. So again, it's the impact on Queensway. Queensway is really that first part. So when we're talking about these numbers, it's additional traffic on that short section of Queensway and then on Mapleton and onto the highway.
Okay, and I understand the roundabout and the left turning lane on the eastbound off-ramp is DTI.
Correct.
But these numbers that you're talking about should be added to and trying to push DTI to get that roundabout in sooner than later. so.
Yes, very good point. Those are numbers, and that study was shared with DTI to make sure that their design incorporates it, and then the volume can accept it, and it does as well. And just to note, I don't think it was mentioned that the intersection that doesn't have a roundabout will have a signalized intersection there. It will have traffic lights.
Yeah, okay. So one of the slides, location map, it's one of the, it's the same slide that Councillor Bourgeois was looking at, I believe. No, oh, sorry, before. Yeah, way before. There's two, right there. So in the left-hand image, there's a creek going right straight through that property. And on the right, it's gone.
Yeah, so there, this would have been, we noticed the creek, and it was, I believe it's identified on Department of Environment's website. So we would have circulated this to them, and it was determined that it doesn't fall under the definition of a watercourse. And there's no need for them to submit for a WAWA permit. I'd have to check on that, but I believe it was more or less a ditch that's located on site.
Okay, so they have no environmental to do with that?
There's no environmental concerns with this development moving forward. No,
Okay.
it is not a watercourse.
Okay, how about the trail, snowmobile trail number 646? It basically lines up with the Cherry Lawn, and then it goes along front of Queensway westbound.
I'm not sure where the snowmobile trail is located today. What I can say is there are no particular easements or encumbrances for the snowmobile trail registered on Service New Brunswick today.
And if there would be something, who's looking after that, or who would be looking after that, the developer himself? Or?
If they use part of this property, they can speak with the developer about creating a right-of-way agreement with the developers for that purpose. That would be legally binding and registered on title. But as of today, there's nothing registered on title.
There's nothing there, okay, because it's showing on their maps online, so.
Okay.
So for myself, this recommendation, without the roundabout in place, works in the property owner's favor and not for the residents that have been coping with the huge amounts of traffic at the intersection of Mapleton and the westbound off-ramp, plus the eastbound off-ramp to the left, turn left on or north. There's still a question of the provincial trail, the creek you've answered. I'll be voting against this until we get some legitimate action. Thank you.
Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dylan, thanks for the presentation. Renee, could you just come to the mic? I want to make sure that I heard you correctly before moving along. The traffic circle you said was a provincial initiative last year, 2024, and they're looking at doing it this year. Do we have that in writing? Have we received a letter from the new level of government or new acting government that this is actually going to take place?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Crossman. The roundabout was actually planned about 5 years ago. That's,
okay.
Just a minor correction there. And we don't have anything in writing per se as far as a letter of commitment because this is their highway system. What we do have is a good partnership as far as sharing knowledge, sharing what the projects, upcoming projects are. And this project is well underway, under design, really getting close to tender season. And everything is moving in that direction. So I'm not sure what would pull this out of their list at this point. But again, we're not in control of that, obviously. All I know is that everything is in motion, and then everything's looking for the 2025 construction, which is what they've been telling us for.
Okay, my only concern becomes if this process is forward and moves forward and is successful, that the developer holds off based on the idea of a roundabout. and the province doesn't come through and build the roundabout. So that's the reason why I wanted that conversation with you. Another conversation with you, you had mentioned there'd be a signalized traffic light at the other exit. Are you speaking the south of the Trans-Canada Highway? Because this development is north of the Trans-Canada Highway.
Correct, yes. So I guess the north interchange would be a roundabout, as you see on the drawing, and the south interchange, just south of TCH, would be a signalized intersection. And the DTI did consider doing a roundabout at the southern intersection as well. It kind of made sense to have two roundabouts there. But through the design process, they determined there was actually a creek. There was some complication with some environmental permits, land acquisition issues, and so they've decided to move along with just the signalized intersection for now.
Okay, and that'd be at their cost, is that?
Correct.
Okay, good. And my last question on traffic flow. It's nice to see that the roundabout on the north side of the Trans-Canada Highway could alleviate the pressure of the cars backing up on the Trans-Canada Highway heading west, which is good because that's a very big traffic concern. Previous to Costco being up that street, it was 10 times worse, but it seems to always get worse. The Mapleton Road and Queensway exit, so turning right onto Queensway, no looking at a right-hand turning lane to get people into Queensway quicker and allowing traffic to continue straight up Mapleton Road. I know there's a sidewalk there now, I understand that, but I'm just curious to know if the road is wide enough that you can do two lanes, one allowing traffic quicker access to Queensway to avoid that intersection.
Yeah, thank you for the concern and the question. That was looked at through the traffic impact study. So there's sort of things that they would look at in the traffic impact study, what kind of recommendations would be required, and this did not came out.
Okay.
Yeah, and something to consider is whenever we have these slip lanes, we want to call it, it does tend to increase speed as well, so we won't put them in if they're not required as part of the traffic volume study.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, I don't see any other questions at this time. I think we can go forward with the vote. Thank you. So the vote passes with 2 nay votes, Councillor Butler and Councillor Richard. And we will be at a public hearing on March 17th. Thank you.
Your Worship, the next item is statements by members of council.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Kingston.
Thank you, Madam Addis. Everyone, just to kind of mention and remember 3 long-time and well-known Monctonians. They were all influential in their own professions and domains, and they all left us in January of this year. A few weeks ago, and many of us in the room know these gentlemen. Firstly, former Moncton City Councillor, longtime barrister Wendell Maxwell. Distinguished law career spanning over 50 years. Wendell was a sportsman as well, longtime member at Moncton Golf Club, but really a promoter and supporter of local boxing, staging live events in Moncton back in the 1970s. Mr. Maxwell passed January 5th at the age of 85. Roger Dupuy, longtime country music and live entertainment promoter over many years, the owner of the Urban Corral on St. George Street, named Canada's top country show bar 2 years running back in the 1980s. Among the many top acts of the day that Mr. Dupuy brought in, you had the Beach Boys, although that was in Shediac, Alabama, performed in Moncton over a few evenings. Always a promoter of homegrown talent whenever possible. I can think of future stars like Shirley Myers, Joan Kennedy. They come to mind. Mr. Dupuy left us in January the 8th at the age of 86. Norm Red Mullins, a longtime member of the Moncton Fire Department, 33 years service, an outstanding athlete, in particular baseball. He was actually drafted by the Milwaukee Braves in 1954. He was a very, very solid hockey defenseman with the great Moncton Hawks senior championship teams back in the 1960s, very well known in the Moncton hockey community, and again, a longtime member of MFD. Red reached 90 years young and left us January 14th. So on behalf of myself and all of council, our condolences to the family and many friends of Wendell Maxwell, Roger Dupuy, and Norm Red Mullins. Thank you, Your Worship. Merci.
Thank you. Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Question pour la greffière. Avez-vous eu la chance de produire la liste des conseillers, conseillères qui ont été accusés de mauvaise conduite de 2016 à 2021?
Il y en a eu 3 qui ont été publics. Il y en avait un novembre le 15, 2020, avril 19, 2021 et le 20 janvier le dernier. Il y avait un qui n'a pas été public. C'était novembre en 2020, novembre 2022 et octobre 2022.
Est-ce que toutes les investigations sur ce cas-là ont été rendues publiques, ratifiées en public comme
Non.
on a fait la dernière fois?
Juste les 3 premiers que j'ai annoncés. Les 3 autres, non.
Madame la maire, pourquoi ce manque de transparence? Pourquoi qu'on protège
C'est pas
certains
moi,
membres du Conseil?
je pense que c'est probablement une situation légale, alors our solicitor will take that.
So this is likely a conversation that we need to have in private session of council, but we need to keep in mind also that some of these complaints occurred before the current bylaw was in place. They were under different policies or different guidelines, but we can bring this to a private session of council if you'd like further information on it.
When did the policy or the new policy come into effect?
I believe the bylaw has been in effect since 2018, but I'd have to confirm that.
Okay, so were any since 2018 that have not been ratified in public?
Yes. 2,
What?
3. 3.
Since 2018, so under the present,
No, but some of those may have been resolved informally. So I think we need a further discussion in private. We really can't get into detail.
okay, but this is not a legal, this is a procedural issue. We have a procedural bylaw that says anything that is voted on in private must be ratified in public. So since 2018, that's 7 years that we have had, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's call them convictions or otherwise, that should have been ratified in public. That is not your, I guess, your concern. This is the mayor as the person who is responsible for preparing the agenda for council to make sure that whenever we have a decision made in private, come back to public, right?
Actually, Nick, the addition to the bylaw was done on December 17, 2022, which added that section.
To bring back?
Yes.
Well, Robert's Rules of Order, as we've been following it probably since the corporation was created 100 and some odd years ago, calls for any decision in private to come back to be ratified in public, to be valid. That's in the Municipalities Act. I asked that question 2 weeks ago. So why are some cases of infractions to our code of conduct publicized, but others, I suspect are convictions, have not been ratified in public? Does that mean that whatever sanction was given to those convicted councillors, have they been implemented? Madame la Greffière, were all of the convictions brought for public ratification, and did the penalties, if any, given to these convictions followed through? For instance, if somebody had to apologize publicly for their actions, and that was a penalty for the conviction, but was never apologized for in public, can we get that information?
From the research that I did, or that was provided to me from my office, it was anybody who had to bring a public apology has been brought forward.
Okay, so that has been ratified in public. But there are some aspects that have not been ratified in public as we did 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
right? Okay, Madame la Maire, when are we going to finally, after years, going to bring forth these cases? I wasn't here from 2016 to 2021, so I think for the full sake of transparency, when do we get to ratify them in public?
Well, as has been made clear, this has only been a rule since 2022, and our solicitor also mentioned that perhaps not all of these were convictions, as you like to call them.
Well, until further notice, so why, explain to me why we did 2 weeks ago what we did, which was immediately or as soon as possible after the private meeting, when it wasn't a conviction, it was a verdict of innocence, I guess is the equivalent, boom, we ratified in public. But other cases that were here for years hasn't been, contrary to the provincial legislation that has been in place for years. Whenever we have a decision in private, we have to bring it for ratification in public. Anyways, as soon as possible would be appreciated. Merci.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we can move on.
Next is, I just have to get myself situated here. Sorry. Reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings, rapports et recommandations des comités et réunions à huis clos. And there are two coming before council today. That Moncton City Council authorized the release of funds approved during the 2025 budget deliberations in the amount of $84,000 to the Canadian Legion Branch Number 6 to cover expenses for the year, and $57,000 to Dans un Corps, and that the amounts be taken from the 2024 council contingency.
Thank you. Councillor Leger, do you wish to move this? And Deputy Mayor Theriault, do you wish to second? Great, thank you. Questions? Councillor Bourgeois.
Yeah, I just want a clarification on the motion. The motion that we adopted at the committee of the whole, I didn't see the final version, and it says here, the release of funds approved during the 2025 budget deliberations in the amount of $84,000. Is that the amount that was approved? I thought it was $77,000, but during the committee of the whole, we added $7,000. So did we budget $84,000 or did we budget $77,000?
Go ahead, Greg.
From the 2025 budget, there was $77,000 accounted for in the budget. So there is an additional $7,000 that would equal then the 84. All of those monies, however, are coming from council contingencies in the budget. Some of that money, that 77 was still coming from council contingency. So it's probably the 77 from the budget plus an additional 7.
Right, it's just that the wording is not right. When we say approved during the 2025 budget deliberations in the amount of $84,000, that's not what we had approved during the budget.
It was 77, so
Exactly.
probably the way to, including 77 that was approved in the budget plus an additional 7 approved last week.
No, I know, we're saying the same thing, but the wording on the motion that we modified, we amended, and it was, I think it was unanimous, we agree, but it's not the right wording.
Agreed.
It's not the end of the world for $7,000, and it would come out to the same thing, but we didn't approve, the way it's worded, we approved $84,000, which we did. Somebody would say, well, look, at your budget, you approved $77,000, and here it says we approved $84,000.
Perhaps,
So, anyways.
perhaps we could have a friendly amendment to just say that it was approved and then added to, if the mover and seconder are in alignment with that, it comes out to exactly the same thing at the end. Thank you. Any other questions? I think we can move to the vote. Terrific. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Sorry. The next one is that Moncton City Council adopt the proposed modifications to the traffic calming policy.
Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to move the changes to the traffic calming policy? Thank you, Councillor Steve, seconded by Councillor Kingston. Any questions? I think we can go to the vote. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Next is reports from administration et rapport de l'administration. First up is engineering acquisition of GPS equipment, and the motion before council this evening is that City Council approve the purchase of the proposed GPS survey equipment from Cancel Survey Equipment, Inc. at the quoted price of $297,559.30. Madame la maire adjointe.
So we have a motion. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Conseiller Richard moved, seconded by Conseiller Leblanc. Merci. Any questions, discussion? Je vois pas, non, c'est quoi?
Peux-tu driver la bus?
Conseiller Butler, go ahead, please.
Drive the bus for l'application, Shelley.
Oui.
Please.
Yes, you are.
Well, oh, there I am now. I turned red. Whew. I am so happy about that. I'm starting to be concerned. Being an Irishman, I don't mind being green. I guess my issue is that, you know, at the very bottom of your, it says that Trimble Inc. is located at United States of America. I'm just wondering, is there any companies in Canada that sells this equipment?
Sorry, just if you just press your button on the podium. There we go. Voila.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Butler. To be honest, I would have to do some research. There's definitely some limited amount of companies that do these types of products. And this is definitely one of the main players in the game, if you wish. And we do have all of our software and all the other equipment is with this company, and that's why we're kind of invested in keeping the same as far as when it comes to sole sourcing.
Yeah, I see your point, but at the same time, you know, we're having tariff issues with the United States, and I would think that it would be, if we could postpone this for a bit, maybe even a week or so, that we could find out if there's anything in Canada that could match our software and work with it.
Yes, if council decides to do so, we would do more research on, well, first of all, this particular company, what's the tie with Canada, and obviously there are some representation here in Canada going through the manufacturer, but we could give you more details on that if that's council's wish, for sure.
I can't speak for council, but it'll be mine. I'll vote against it unless we can get a change here. Thank you, Your Worship.
You could make a motion to postpone if you wish.
Do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I get red again?
Oh, sorry. There you
No,
go.
I don't mind. Like I said, I would make a motion that, amendment to the motion that we have our staff look at if there's any companies in Canada that can fulfill this
So we can postpone.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
perfect.
sorry, I forgot the very end. Postpone.
Awesome, thank you. And it's seconded by Deputy Mayor Terrio. And on the motion to postpone, should we do the voting? Yeah, on that? Okay.
I'm sorry, just, I didn't know we were going to the vote. I just want to make council aware that there was a rebate, involved here. And we'll ask the manufacturer if the rebate is still valid with this extension, but we may lose on that. I just want to make sure there's clarity there.
Thank you. On the vote to postpone? Oh, sorry, no, we can't. Unfortunately, it's not debatable, a motion to postpone. Sorry. Yep. Marty? Got it. And it's unanimous to postpone.
Turn my mic on. Next is CN invoice for Edinburgh Rail Crossing. The motion before council this evening is that City Council directs administration to pay CN the invoiced amount of $122,546.87, including HST, for the work completed on Edinburgh Drive Railway crossing, and authorizes administration to pay the remaining work to be completed in 2025 up to a maximum project cost of $168,000.
Thank you. Councillor Legier, do you wish to move this recommendation?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for it? Councillor Butler? Any questions? Councillor Bourgeois?
Merci, Madame la Maire. Juste curieux, pourquoi c'était pas à l'horizon? Vous étiez en négociation. Est-ce que ça ne serait pas une meilleure idée d'aviser le Conseil lors de la période budgétaire, de dire c'est possible que ça s'en vienne, on va le mettre dans le budget. Sinon, ben, c'est charrier l'année d'après. Parce que vous êtes en négociation. Éventuellement, il y aurait eu une résolution, là.
Oui, tout à fait, conseiller Bourgeois, c'est un très bon point. On était au courant des travaux. Donc, moi, on m'a été mis au courant, disons, en janvier 2024, comme que c'est sur la lettre. Et puis, j'en avais discuté avec le département des finances. Et tout simplement, ça a été un oubli lors des budgets capitaux de 2025, disons, qui s'est passé dans le processus. Donc, on cherche à savoir, ça serait quoi vraiment le processus qu'on pourrait établir pour ne pas oublier ces petits, je vais les appeler des one-off. Parce que évidemment, c'est pas notre infrastructure, c'est pas là qu'était le focus pour nous pendant la délibération des budgets. Et puis, unfortunately, oui, c'était un oubli. Mais la façon de procéder aurait été vraiment de faire une demande au Conseil pendant la délibération des budgets capitaux. Puis on n'aurait même pas été obligé de revenir aujourd'hui. Donc, très bon point.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Madame la Maire.
I don't see any other questions. I think we can go to the vote. And the vote passes unanimously. Thank you.
Le prochain item, c'est une résolution pour établir un comité du Conseil sur le multiculturalisme. C'est conseiller Daniel Bourgeois qui a fait la motion, and I believe that as staff, it's going to be our CAO that's going to first discuss this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So again, as indicated by the City Clerk, that this item was brought forward during the December 16th regular Public Council meeting. We have the motion there in the CRF. And as staff were preparing the background of this item, it became apparent that it would be helpful for staff to provide a detailed account for the highlights that highlights our commitment to access to diversity and inclusion. Actions that include, but are not limited to, the first immigration strategy launched in 2014, the first city in New Brunswick to have human resources dedicated to immigration, In 2020, a second immigration full-time human resource dedicated to international students. Our city is seeing record growth in immigration because of some of those items. Social inclusion plan, a DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and policy in place, with 3 subcommittees tasked with implementing action plans. Full-time human resource in a new role dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion, anti-racism, and employee engagement. An employee census that was launched in 2024, and which we are currently awaiting results, that would provide a demographic snapshot of our current staff. The anti-racism implementation in planning and process of being completed. That's the Ivan Okello from Okan Consulting. That should be done within a month, as well as other initiatives. So we would like to bring details of all those actions in the coming, in one of the upcoming council meetings within a month, to provide more details to council on some of the very important pieces that the city is doing to ensure diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as the adoption of the recent appointments, boards, and committees to council.
Terrific. Thank you. First up, Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la maire. Je ne sais pas si je dois le refaire, mais je repropose ma résolution et je garderai mes commentaires pour la fin parce que, comme personne qui fait la résolution, j'ai le droit au mot de la fin. Merci.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Deputy Mayor Thériault? Oh, excusez-moi. Voilà.
I will second it so that we can debate the motion.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to say that I see where Councillor Bourgeois is coming from with this motion, but I'm not big on actually another committee. I think that, we have a hard time getting committees together and, how do you select, and it says that 7, I just have to get it up here for a second. It was talking about getting so many people from the public involved, 7 newcomers. And I got to say, I don't know who you would select for that. I think that, and I've spoken to Councillor Bourgeois before about this, is that I think that with MAGMA, we need to have a little bit more closeness, per se, with council. Maybe even having a few more times that the committee chair, Mr. LeBlanc, would come in and keep us up to date, or maybe Councillor Steves, where he sits on that board, could do that. I just don't see any advantage of having this committee, especially in the, we're coming up to our last year of our mandate as council. I'm not sure what we're going to put forward for the next council to work with. I think that the last committee we tried to put together, it was just absolute chaos. And, the selection for another committee would, that is so involved and intertwined in the community would be, I think it would be chaos again. I just think that we have a lot of groups in the city that are already working on this, with the official languages, with multiculturalism, equalization, equality, and inclusion. I'd like to hear from Councillor Bourgeois on what he sees are the benefits compared to what we have now. So I'll leave that to him, and as of right now, I probably wouldn't be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Bourgeois, did you want to address that?
We don't have any committee on which newcomers focus their needs, their suggestions for how to improve the quality of life of newcomers. So giving them a voice to council, none of us are newcomers. So we are making decisions based on a number of committees. And this would be one because I think there's a gap. There's a gap because Manju Verma, 2.5 years ago, told us there was a gap. She recommended a forum, a task force, committee, if you wish. This is an idea that came to me from newcomers that said, could we have some sort of mechanism through which we could communicate our special needs or particularities, but also suggestions on how to do things. And I'll throw an example out of thin air of somebody comes in from India or Pakistan or Algeria, and they say, oh, it's surprising how you collect your garbage. Back where I'm from, this is the way. Have you ever thought of that? Well, no, maybe I'll communicate it. So they can enrich the quality of life by having different perspectives. I sit on 3 committees. Kodiak Transpo. There is no newcomer that sits there and can represent the needs of the newcomers with their transit needs. I sit on the Seniors Advisory Committee. There is no newcomer on that committee. So I sit on the Social Inclusion Committee, which is mandated in part. There's 16 pillars. One of them is multiculturalism. There is one person that is a newcomer. She's a smart cookie, contributes significantly to the thinking, but that committee is not there to represent the newcomers. So the purpose of this committee is to get the voice of the newcomers on newcomers' issues, not through other committees, but on that specific sector of our policy, not just to recruit them, but especially to integrate them, keep them here, because in the past, a lot of newcomers came and then eventually wound up in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, or elsewhere. So I don't know if that answers your question. What's the difference? This would be, en français on dit par et pour, so a committee comprised of newcomers to focus on newcomers' issues through their own voices, through their own minds, rather than through intermediaries.
Sure.
Yeah, I catch the drift of what you're trying to do, but when you say, when I read this and it says select 7 newcomers, so how do we know we're getting the right ones? That's my concern. Is, I mean, you know, we have so many cultures coming in here now. It's not like, okay, now next year we're going to have to add 2 more or 3 more. Now at the end we're going to have 20, you know, and a committee. I just I would like to get more. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. You know, we talked about this, but I would still like to have more input from the committees that we have, from the multicultural, the bilingual, official bilingual, from the social inclusion with Huron. We do have a newcomer that works at Kodiak Transit,
It works, but
Yeah.
does not
Well,
sit on the committee.
I think they hired him so they could have that, also that input. But again, no, you're right. But the board is set up that it's for elected officials, to be fair to that board. The seniors advisory, I mean, people that are here can apply for that already, be a newcomer, it's open, it could be open. I just think that starting a new committee, we can go back and forth here all night, I'm not going to keep anybody, we'll lose the bet, but I would like to get a little bit more information. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Terrio.
Merci, Madame la Maire. I do agree with some of the components of the motion, and I do understand where Conseiller Bourgeois is going with this. I do appreciate, though, the city manager's proposal of looking deeper into what we already have. And it is a concern. I remember well, particularly in my neighborhood where I live, and I see that Angelique is here, and she would know probably what I'm referring to. But so many newcomers have no idea. It can be something as simple as Conseiller Bourgeois mentioned, the garbage. I remember having to meet with some of them and explain this to them. That's not really, I didn't think that was my job, but I did it anyway. So, there are a lot of other social issues. So I think the idea is to make the transition from where they're coming from and their culture, to make it a bit easier. And I think that l'Université de Moncton could certainly provide a lot of information on this. And I think we could work very, very closely with l'Université de Moncton. I just want to add that, for example, with the Arts Board, we have a great deal of people who are not originally from Moncton or New Brunswick or Canada. So I think we're doing well in that area. The Heritage Board as well, we have some people who are newcomers, but I tend to agree with Conseiller Bourgeois. Maybe we could do better, but at the moment, I do like what, if you could repeat, Monsieur Le Gérant, what you're suggesting. Merci.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, again, it wasn't particular to this motion, it was just the idea that we are committing, administration is committing to bring back to council an in-depth presentation on all aspects of our corporation that we're dealing with in diversity and inclusion. So that council is well aware of not only from appointments to boards, committees, but also the different internal actions that we're taking to ensure that the city is being as inclusive as it can be when it thinks about policies, as well as an employer and such. So within a month.
So could this be linked to the motion, and could maybe we add?
There could be an alternative to the motion, or there could be an alternative to what was being recommended, I guess, that we could postpone a decision on this until after city staff could come in and provide a broad view of all of what's happening currently within the city, and then again engage in the conversation or debate after that.
I find that very interesting. Merci. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Yeah, could there just be, Councillor Bourgeois, are you in favor of, getting all of the information so that we can make an informed decision?
That's not my call. If somebody wants to make a motion to postpone, I think that's the way we proceed normally.
Okay. Motion to postpone. Councillor LeBlanc, do you wish to make a motion to postpone? Yes. Is there a seconder for a motion to postpone? Thank you, Councillor Kingston. On the motion to postpone, we will go right to the vote then. So there is unanimous support to postpone. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is reading of bylaws, and there's one this evening, and the following bylaw will be posted online in lieu of reading them into the record at a future meeting pursuant to Section 15.3A, 2A, and B of the Local Governance Act, or same can be faxed, mailed, or emailed to interested parties who, at their request, just contact the clerk's office. So the first bylaw is a bylaw, an amendment of a bylaw relating to the adoption of the City of Moncton's municipal plan, being bylaw Z222.42, 356 Ryan Road. It's the first reading. Arrêté portant modification de l'arrêté concernant l'adoption du plan municipal de la ville de Moncton sur l'arrêté Z222.42, 356 rue Ryan. C'est la première lecture. And I need a mover and a seconder. Oh, no, never mind. I lied. Never mind. Just trying to get you guys to vote more. Next would be the notice of motions and resolutions, avis de motion et résolution, and we have a few this evening. The first is a deposit to General Operating Reserve Fund, whereas Section 101 of the Local Governance Act of New Brunswick confers powers on the City Council to create a General Operating Reserve Fund, and whereas the said act requires that deposits made into the General Operating Reserve Fund be authorized by resolution, and whereas the City Treasurer recommends a deposit of $991,033 be the budgeted 2025 deposits from the city's general operating fund be made to the general operating reserve fund. Therefore, be it resolved that authorization be granted for a deposit in the amount of $991,033 into the general operating reserve fund.
Terrific. Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to move this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Butler, seconded by Councillor Edgett. Any questions? We can go to the vote, I think.
Activate. There.
I think that's everybody that's in the room.
Councillor Legier and Councillor Crossman are not in the room.
Unanimous with those in attendance. Thank you.
Next is deposit to General Capital Reserve Fund, whereas Section 101 of the Local Governance Act of New Brunswick confers powers on City Council to create a General Capital Reserve Fund, and whereas the said act requires that deposits made into the General Capital Reserve Fund be authorized by resolution, and whereas the City Treasurer recommends that the deposit of $6,900,548 being the 25 budgeted deposited from the city's general operating fund be made into the General Capital Reserve Fund. Therefore, be it resolved that the authorization be granted for a deposit in the amount of $6,900,548 into the General Capital Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to move this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Kingston, seconded by, thank you, Councillor Steeves. I think we can go to the vote. And it is unanimous with who is in the room.
Councillor Crossman is not in the room. Next, deposit to Utility Operating Reserve Fund, whereas Section 117.7 of the Local Governance Act of New Brunswick confers power on City Council to create a Utility Operating Reserve Fund, and whereas the said act requires that the deposits made into the Utility Operating Reserve Fund be authorized by resolution, and whereas the City Treasurer recommends the deposit of $45,000 be the budgeted 2025 deposit from the city's Utility Operating Fund be made into the Utility Operating Reserve Fund. Therefore, be it resolved that the authorization be granted for a deposit in the amount of $45,000 into the Utility Operating Reserve Fund.
Oh, thank you. Deputy Mayor Terrio, do you wish to move this? Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Richard. On the vote,
Come on. Please voted. It's unanimous.
terrific. It's unanimous. Thank you.
The next is a deposit, whereas Section 117.7 of the Local Governance Act of New Brunswick confers powers on City Council to create utility capital reserve funds, and whereas the said act requires that deposits made into the utility capital reserve fund be authorized by resolution, whereas the city treasurer recommends a deposit of $3,934,938 be the budgeted 2025 deposit to the city utility operating fund be made to the utility capital reserve fund. Therefore, be it resolved that the authorization be granted for a deposit in the amount of $3,934,938 into the utility capital reserve fund.
Terrific. Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to move this? Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Legier. I think we can go to the vote.
Everybody's voted. Okay.
And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Next is resolution of animal control. It's a very long resolution. I will read the be it therefore resolved. Now therefore be it resolved that Victor Wickham, Denise Comeau, and Richard Perry are hereby appointed animal control officers and bylaw enforcement officers, and whereby authorized to act for and on council's behalf pursuant to the Animal Control Service Agreement referenced above, and pursuant to the section noted in the acts referenced above, to conduct inspections for the purpose of administrating or enforcement bylaw H 1322, a bylaw relating to the animal control. Be it further resolved that Victor Wickham, Denise Comeau, and Richard Perry are hereby authorized to act for and on council's behalf pursuant to the Animal Control Service Agreement referenced above, and pursuant to the sections noted in the act referenced above, to issue administrative penalties, orders of notice, make applications to the Court of King's Bench, and lay information in the provincial court, to obtain orders applicable by bylaw H 1322, a bylaw relating to the animal control bylaw.
Thank you. Is there someone who, thank you, Councillor Richard, seconded by Councillor Kingston. Oh, a question. Councillor Bourgeois, go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir une version française de ces résolutions-là?
Oui, on l'a ici en français, je peux te l'envoyer.
Pardon?
Je peux te l'envoyer si tu veux.
Merci beaucoup.
Any other questions? I think we can go to the vote.
I know. I promise it works.
And the motion passes unanimously, and I believe that is the conclusion of today's agenda. I would take a motion. Thank you very much, Councillor Richard. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you all. Merci.